It's done when they need to be
Not we will be.
I'm teaching ancient history now. Just to give you a little background of who I am, this is my 23rd year of teaching, and I am an instructional leader at Rio Rancho High School. I'm also very involved with the AP program over there, and so what I've done for the last 7 years is I've scored AP World History essays at the national level. So I'm very familiar with this type of scoring, and I've led a bunch of that here. Last year when we did EOCs for the first time, I actually sat on the committee that wrote them, and so I've done a lot of the calibration here at the district level. So I'm just passing that thought on to all of you. Again, this is an interesting process, and I know you've never done this type of group type administration before, have you? So, Paul, jump in with me as we go through this, but I just want to talk to you a little bit about our experience, because we just administered our essay on Monday and Tuesday. Is yours a 2-day process?
Yes.
Monday and
Tuesday next week.
Okay. The way that we organized it was we pulled the answer sheets. And again, there's a process for that. The name of the student will be hidden, so you'll have the student ID number on there. So to me, the first thing that's going to be most important is that you print a roster of your students with their ID numbers next to them. Because otherwise, it's going to be pretty difficult to coordinate passing those papers out. So my question is this: are you scoring? Are you administering them in your classes?
Yes.
Okay. So that'll help, but I will tell you that that was one of the things we realized right away after first period, that it helps to have that roster ahead of time, because the kids' names are not on the page anywhere.
Yeah, and we don't have answer sheets yet either.
No, so let me explain to you about that process too, if you'd like.
The answer sheets will be tomorrow morning.
I'll be available. So are they printing them themselves?
Yes.
Okay, so let me talk a little bit about that process as well. Numbers-wise, for us at the high school, it was pretty costly to try and do it through regular printers. So what we did is we sent them to our printer to have them printed on the copier. So when you go in and you've used DDC before, you want to check off and make sure you've got it by teacher. Make sure you've unchecked that box that says show student name so that it's not showing. That's the big one that I discovered after I did a bunch of them. And then make sure you've chosen, if the teacher has all that grade level grade, it should be pretty easy. Just make sure it's semester A you're choosing. And that should filter out any issues. We didn't have too many extras that were printed that way. But what I did was I sat down, and I had 20 teachers to do, so hopefully your numbers aren't that high. It took me about 2 hours to download each of these. I downloaded them to a PDF file, gave them to my copy person or whatever, and then sent them to print. What it was nice was it will print them by class period, which will make it easier.
So can I stop you a second?
Yeah.
You printed everybody's.
Well, I sent them to, we have a copy center, we're not allowed to print there,
Right.
so they printed for us, yes.
Okay. So
I found it was easier because I knew
what you were
what I
doing.
needed. And then it wasn't like teacher A printed her answer sheets with the names on them, teacher B did it differently. It just made it very smooth.
Okay.
The difference will be where you were kind of the organizer.
They don't have the access.
The STC at the mid schools will be the one kind of driving the plan and the organization of how this will happen. So
STC.
Yeah,
the school,
testing
Veronica,
coordinator.
Catherine. the
Oh,
school
that's
testing
nice. I
coordinator.
had no
That's
idea
what
who
that
that
was.
They will.
So Veronica will print those?
Well, I'm not saying she'll print them. The plan that Leslie came up with, she's not right. The plan that Leslie came up with, Veronica will have a plan for you guys as to how to do this.
So, have that
They're-
conversation.
They have so many more teachers and stuff, they had to departmentalize it more
All
than
right.
what you guys would probably have to do.
So
Anyway, I just
what
wanted to-
Paul's going to send you, though, are the essay, and there's one per child, right, the essay prompts for them. So you'll get a stack of essays, and then you'll get a folder with the teacher's name and class period on them. So in an inclusion class, you
Again,
are going
that's
to get...
part of the org, that they might not.
Okay. You don't think it'll be separate?
They're kind of deciding that at their sites on how they want to do that, because their schedules are different.
It would be great if they put the inclusion teacher's packet in with the regular ed teacher,
Mhm.
because we found that they were separated, and that's caused flow issues.
Well, the
for
problem
us.
is, yeah, at some of the schools, kids aren't rostered to an inclusion teacher.
They're
Some
all
of
on
them
the
are.
same grade book now.
They
The
are,
inclusion
yeah.
kids
At
are on
different-
the
on some
regular ed
schools,
grade
it-
book.
It depends
Yeah.
on the school.
Can we stop here for just a
Yeah.
second? I know that we're supposed to mark the text as they read it. It's called close reading. That's what they're supposed to do. And then on our instructions, it said we're only getting a class set.
So,
So
so not,
Everyone's
that's
getting
been
the
changed.
essay. Everyone's getting the
So
essay.
that's
Every copy
changed.
for every
Okay,
kid.
because I was a little freaked out by that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the other process things we found, though, since they're close reading on one day and then writing the essay the next day, what we instructed our teachers to do as soon as the kid got the prompt, which is numbered, because you have to keep them numbered sequentially for keeping in order, is to have the kid write his student ID number on the plate. Because then when you, as the teacher, collect those, you can distribute that back with the answer sheet.
Oh, got it.
Okay, so this way you're tracking that.
Gotcha. On the answer sheet, the one that they're reading off of.
The one that they're annotating, yes.
Yeah, the close reading. I'm so happy that that's not a class set anymore.
Yeah, if we could clarify, that will be for the essay portion.
For the essay
Right,
portion.
right.
And that's all
Not
we're
the-
talking about today. is the
Right,
essay.
but theirs is more intertwined than yours is. There is some multiple choice questions that are tied to the essay and some things like.
But we're not answering those on Monday, Tuesday. We're just doing the
Right.
extended response.
So just so that's clear,
Yeah, we
the
just want-
constructed response,
Right.
they can't mark on the text.
But they're not getting that tomorrow. That Monday.
Right.
You're
That's
gonna only have one
They're
booklet
gonna have one booklet, okay.
for the class.
right.
Yes,
For
but the essay will be.
But the
in
essay-
It's
the-
not ideal, but okay.
Right.
But it's better than the other way around,
Right.
so it's okay.
Yeah.
As far as time goes.
Yeah.
The other thing that I discovered after we started doing this was that don't hand out the answer sheets right away when they're doing the annotation. Because I had some teachers do that, and the kids use the answer sheets to take notes on, and then I
Oh
had to
my
read the
gosh.
answer sheets.
Okay.
So it's really helpful if maybe at the end of the class period, when you're getting close to the finish, before you pick everything up, pass out the answer sheets, and then you can pick up the answer sheet with the annotated document,
have it all
so you can
together.
hand it back the next day together, and that'll help you out with that flow as well.
So at the end of that Monday day.
Yeah, it just makes more sense, and then you're not gonna have to go through the repetition and everything. How many pages were they given to write their essays?
Two full, yeah, two full.
Okay, so, again, this will be your site coordinator's decision, but what we found was, and again, it was high school, but many of our kids at the 11th grade level, for example, needed an extra sheet of paper. You can print a generic document for that extra sheet. So it's good to have a few on hand in case you have that kid who's gonna write 3 pages.
So one of those lined sheets from the DDC?
Yeah, so what you're, again, when those answer sheets are printed, you have that option on the bottom where it says to generate forms. If you choose to generate a generic answer sheet and then print enough so that each teacher has a little bit on hand.
Nice. And there's no ID on those?
There's no ID on them. It says student name, but tell the kids not to fill it out. All they would do is put their ID number on it so it can go with the essay.
So they would put their ID number on a generic sheet?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, we'll have kids who will write more.
Oh my
Plan for
gosh.
your advanced classes, definitely. Your kids who are in those pre-K classes, write a lot. Kids with big handwriting, write a lot. We have a lot of 3-page essays. Okay. So, again, that's the basic, the essay day, pass it out, have them annotate. What you're gonna find after the fact, then, after they've written the essay and everything's collected, you're gonna wanna sit and calibrate. And I honestly don't know what the plan is with your teachers. One of the things, Lori Sturgis, who's the instructional leader at Cleveland High School, and I sat down last night for a few hours and calibrated the 4 rubrics. Because there's things that the kids are gonna do that you don't expect, and there's things that you expect them to do that they won't do. And that's where the rubric comes into play, where you have to adjust those issues of the rubric accordingly. And that's what I'm gonna walk you through with the rubric here.
So we're gonna get a different rubric from the rubric that we got?
No, you're gonna get this, and who's 8th grade here?
One.
Okay, so I can give you the 8th grade rubric. I'm
So
gonna-
there is an 8th grade rubric?
Yeah, but it was pretty vague.
Okay, because I thought this was going to be the rubric
I thought
across
it was
all
too.
grades.
It's
Because
not
this is
what
only
I-
3
what I
categories,
got.
the 8th grade rubric. Is that the one you have?
Yeah.
It's actually similar to
Remember you
this, it
said-
just cuts the last category off of language. 8th grade?
Well, there's absolutely no grammar.
The last time
That's
she
the
told us through
language,
this process
that's the language one.
is that this was too
Let's
specific.
get clarification if Luana
Because-
wants that rubric.
Yeah.
What was submitted in the folder from the EOC team was that to me. Not,
This one?
yes.
Or the 7th grade
No,
one?
no, that one.
But the conversation
So-
we
I
had,
thought the conversation was we were gonna
Right,
move to that
because-
because it made more sense.
it was more general.
And it was closer to the high school one,
Yes.
actually, if I
Right.
recall.
And this was too specific oriented, which would be difficult to calibrate. At least that's what I was
Yes, you're
understanding.
absolutely right.
Is that one different than these two?
That's what we at least said, and that's what I said to my
I
PLC.
believe so too, that the 8th
One's
grade was
eighth
going to
grade,
be this
yeah.
one.
I see, that's just say
It
that's
only
this
has
one.
3 categories.
Right, and so I think even if we work right now with the 6th grade rubric, you'll be able to apply this to the 8th grade. For some reason, and we really should check and print, I thought the 8th grade one actually had up to a 5 on it, because I thought it met the transition to
That
high
was
school.
9th grade.
No, 9th grade has 5 on it. 9 through 12 has 5.
We
Right.
never saw one with 5.
With a 5? Okay, so then it's just 4. So it'll be like this one then. Okay? And so we'll use that because I think that that's going to help us. So
We're gonna find out about that.
I'm going to keep the score sheet aside for now. I don't want
The
to talk
score
about
sheet only has 4.
Right. So okay, so it is 4 all the way through. So a couple of things about the rubrics, and then I will give you some essays to look at. But the first thing you've got to do is decide, again, how are you going to do this calibration? Are you, as the leader, going to sit and take some aside immediately to work on it before, do you have time during the day to do that, to start to get an idea? Or are you going to sit with your group after school and say, grade level, we're just going to calibrate this together? Okay?
The
Which
middle
it sounds
school
like.
does have two
Planning periods.
planning periods, and one of them is content grade level.
And I think that was where we decided that, right? You would be able to start doing the calibration.
For the extended response, we're staying after school on Tuesday and
we're-
calibrating.
And we're staying after school on Monday and calibrating.
So you don't
But
have
that's
anything-
You
for-
won't have anything
That's
great.
something entirely
Okay,
different.
no, not
That's
for
the
these.
next one.
Okay.
That's the
The
next
extended
week.
response, so that's what we're planning to do, so that we can grade
We were,
at least 10%.
this is what we talked about today, about working during the day.
During
and
the
then
day,
Working after
yeah.
school on Wednesday.
So, essentially, before you even look at an essay, you want to take the prompt and review what the prompt is asking. If it's like the high school ones, you all have documents that they're annotating, correct? So you want to look at what the prompt asks. You want to go through and annotate that prompt yourselves. What Lori and I discovered last night was after we did that, we then realized we needed to create scoring folders for each of our teachers. So what you need for each of your teachers is a rubric, score sheets enough for each folder, so each class, and the prompt. Because the prompts are going to be numbered, you're going to check those out from your site coordinator, but those should be kept in a folder in one place.
One folder for each teacher.
One
So
folder per
each
teacher.
teacher will have a folder.
A folder, because then all of the scoring materials are secure in one place.
The rubric, a prompt, and a what?
And and several score sheets.
For however many classes they have.
Well, right, to grade.
Because there's,
Right, so we put all the kids on there. All the children. Okay. So, your next step is going to be to look at this rubric with your team and and think about what it says first, because no matter what you look at on that essay, you've really got to see what this rubric is telling you to look for. So I'm going to grab a pen. And honestly, since this is the first time through, read through it together and discuss the gradations of meaning across a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. Now this will be the really hard thing to let go of, but do you see that dark solid line?
Yeah.
Okay? I want you to note the language in the 4 column. Just take a look at the 4 column and let's talk about what's in there that's striking to you. So take a look at all of the categories here in the 4 column first.
Adverbs and adjectives.
Yeah, but then look at what they're saying and what the expectation is, I guess is my question. What is the
just
expectation?
Instead of just grouping, you're logically grouping.
Or skillfully, or strong.
Right.
Okay, so what I know what I did is I went through and I circled things like skillfully and strong and how many of our students are really going to be at that 4 level. And this is the hard thing to let go of because really this is your A. And in reality, most kids aren't there. They might be in one category, but it's more rare, and that's why it's on this side of the bold line. And you've got to convince your teachers of that.
The other thing, if I can just note, I've taken out above grade level, at grade level,
Yes, that's gone
approaching
from
grade
there, that's
level.
right.
I apologize. I
No, it's fine. No
printed
problem.
off the wrong.
So that's gone from the rubric, which is good. Yeah, so it's and it's the same thing. It's like exemplary, absolutely.
There's a big difference between uses and skillfully.
Right, and that's the thing that we have to look at as we go across the category when you're analyzing this with your teachers. And again, so you want them familiar with that first and really spending the time with that rubric. So it's probably worth their while. They've all seen this rubric already, more or less?
Yes.
Okay?
Should have.
My advice would be, while the kids are busy quietly annotating, that they're taking this rubric apart to bring their questions. Because there's going to have to be a discussion about, right, the difference between demonstrates, strong, and just understanding. And that's the easy one. And then limited and little to no. You're going to have to decide what does that really mean in reference to the prompt that you've read. I will tell you also, since we took these rubrics from another school website and tried to delete things when we didn't find it necessary, we still found it necessary in our calibration last night to delete things anyway that didn't apply. So for example, the 12th grade rubric said something about using figurative language. Well, there was no indication of that in the prompt anywhere. There was no indication that they should do that, and it didn't make sense. What we found with the 9th grade rubric, for example, was under the support and evidence category, there was nothing in the 9th grade prompt that indicated that the text had to be quoted. So we couldn't require them to quote. So you have to look at what your prompt says, and you have to take that prompt apart and say, what did the prompt really ask the kids to do? What we did last night then was we wrote that task across the top of the rubric and shared that with our teachers today because they had to have a focus point to go on.
What was that last part you said? I'm sorry.
We took the task, the actual task.
Okay.
So, for example, the 9th grade essay asked kids to read an article, a nonfiction article about, I don't know if any of you saw Soul Surf with a girl who lost her arm from the shark. It was that article. And it asked them to explain how she showed perseverance. So we pulled the word perseverance out of it. Then we found all the evidence in the text that showed perseverance, and then we started reading. And there were a lot of summaries. So you have to decide, what does a summary really warrant? So then the next step was this. As you go through each category, we decided where were the rigorous points, where were the lenient points. What Lori and I found last night, and so you may find or not find was we found the focus information point and the support evidence point were the rigorous points. Because if the kid's not focusing on the prompt, then they missed it.
Right.
So then the gradation came down at the bottom with the 2 and the 1 because, again, responds to most parts of the prompt or demonstrates limited understanding. So if a kid who summarizes still talked about the subject matter and showed some understanding, it was a 2, not a 1. We weren't willing to drop it to that 1 unless there was just absolutely no understanding of what even went on. So that's where we wiggled with that point, but that's the conversation you're going to have with your teachers as you calibrate. Okay. Organization, we backed off on, and we thought that that was a really good point to say, hey, this kid wrote a structured essay. I mean, and honestly, if you look at it, organizes at the 3, organizes ideas and information into logical introductory body and concluding paragraphs, groups related information into paragraphs, use transitions. So if a child did all those things, even if it was still a summary, we still gave the child a 3 there. Because the kid knew how to organize. And that was, so what I did when we calibrated was we wrote on the side under focus and information, rigorous point or lenient point. But have that conversation and decide where are you going to not look the other way, but grade less harshly because that's what the kids did. And again, I mean, we did maybe, I had my 4 groups, maybe 25, 30 essays, and we saw probably about 5 or 6 summaries in there in the 9th grade level. So you know it's going to happen, and we need to find a way to make it viable.
But if it's like not really on topic, but it's organized beautifully, so we can still give them lots of points for it.
We can still give them 3 points for the organization, right?
Okay.
It's not going to be purposeful, and right? I mean, it's probably not going to be a 4. It might be, but
Yeah,
probably
if it's
not.
perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
So then with the support and evidence, this is what you have to look at is, again, did your prompt ask specifically for kids to put in quotes? Did it ask for a certain number of quotes? So if your prompt, like the 9th grade one, was a piece of cake, because the 9th grade one said to use certain evidence, the 12th grade one said you had to have this and this in it, then you could go across this and say, oh, all right, uses relevant and sufficient text. What does sufficient mean? How many? Okay, am I looking for 1 per body paragraph? What is it that your expectations are as a team? And put that in the rubric and add it to it.
So Leslie, how do you deal with a problem that could possibly occur where you have a difference of opinions among teachers? No, well, I think they should have 1 quotation or citation per body paragraph, and another one says, no, it only requires 2 in the prompt in the entire essay. How do they?
So you have to first go back to the prompt, and whatever the prompt dictates has to be the mark. If the prompt just says use evidence, then you need to talk about, as a team, what is acceptable, and it has to come to consensus. Has to, because somebody else is grading your papers. And so you've got to find that middle ground, and that has to be just a group conversation. And so if you're the person in charge of the PLC, when it reaches a point where people can't make up their minds, then make a decision.
You know, Whistle?
Yeah.
You've got substantial text too when you're talking about a 4 versus sufficient text.
Absolutely.
Trying to differentiate between what that is.
Right. And so, and again, differentiate what does substantial mean? You know, how does that work, and will that fit? Again, you'll notice by what you see, right? So we'll look at that together and see if that actually is skillful or not. The other thing you do have, and I want you to notice this as you're going down through these bullets, is you've got 3 bullets per box. So let's say you're reading and the kid organizes it logically, but then it lacks cohesion. And then maybe it doesn't use transitions. Well, balance it out, it's the 2. Okay, split the difference. You're not grading on every bullet, but you're kind of using that to help guide if it's a weird essay. I mean, most kids don't fall that disparate. The thing Lori and I decided last night was that if a kid was on the fence, we were going to push him up. Err on the side of the kid.
So 2 out of 3 bullets in one area would kind of indicate it's that number, right?
Yes,
But if you felt they were in the middle, you push them up.
and push them up. Because otherwise you're going to sit there all day and you
Right.
don't have all day.
And we're not doing .5 or anything.
No, we're not. We're being solid. So we have to be
No
solid.
half sizes.
Yeah, no half sauces allowed. Okay. Language is another one. And let's look at the language here. So sentence structure is the one place that I think is fairly easy to look at. And again, I think what it has here is actually a nice delineation. You've got doesn't demonstrate sentence mastery. The kid can't write a sentence. Uses some repetitive yet correct sentence structure. Okay. And correct and varied or purposeful. That's fairly straightforward. The place that a lot of teachers struggle with is on the next one with the conventions. And you've got the people who say it has to be perfect in spelling or I'm going to knock it down. You've got to come to consensus on that right away. That was our lenient point across the board, as it was last spring when we calibrated, because honestly, you've got some brilliant kids who spell crummy, and you're not going to give them a 1. Right. And it is a draft, thank you. This is a draft essay, written under timed conditions. So
I have a question while we're on that. Is there any way that we could have our really poor handwriters use computers? The ones that we can't read their handwriting?
I think that's up to your school site to determine that. We had a girl with a broken hand the other day who had to type. For obvious reasons.
But our dilemma then is
Is
I would-
fairness.
unless it's in an IEP.
Yeah, I would say unless it falls under an accommodation or a 504, it's,
So if they have crummy handwriting.
So let me tell you how if you want to deal with it that way.
they take something, I mean, I guess part of the thing would be, granted, this is a final and it's a test that, is a more significant percentage of the class, but they wrote an essay 2 weeks ago or
Right, so they've written essays before.
Yeah, so.
Let me just tell you this is always interesting with the college board theory, and I think I would push this with your teachers, is somebody can read it. So make somebody read it.
Well, I can read my own kids, but I'm not grading my own kids.
So what we did last year when we were sitting in the groups doing the EOC is I'm sitting there grading your essays and I can't read this kid's handwriting. I'm going to turn around and ask you, what does it say?
Okay.
You're not grading it, but you're telling me what it says.
Okay.
So look for help. Okay, I think that's really, really key. Okay, so how do you use this score sheet? Well, it's fairly self-explanatory. The essay number, what we did was we took the last 4 digits of the kid's ID number and wrote it in the box. Because that's going to allow you to keep track of the kids' scores. Because 10% has to be double scored, today when we were calibrating, each teacher had a sheet, both sheets went in the envelope together. So one folder was graded by 2 teachers together, and that'll help you gather your 10%. What it helps with when you're calibrating is if you take, either you put the essay between you, or you take an essay a piece and then swap, and then discuss. And honestly, don't wait too long. Do it after 1 essay, 2 essays together, and have that conversation. Because you want to see where you're at. If you're within a point of each other, then fine, keep going. If you're have a wide discrepancy, then it's time to have a conversation and find out where that discrepancy lies. If this is a 16 and this is an 18, then put the average on the sheet. Okay? Then you won't have to hurt yourselves. On the answer sheets, have you ever done any DDC sheets where you've had to enter the scores? Yeah. You've seen that?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, with that then, you're going to enter the score on there after you've got
Leslie, theirs is set
bubble.
up so that
with the bubbles, so
with
they
the
can bubble it
bubbles,
in?
yeah.
Great.
So
You can bubble it.
the focus is worth 4
Oh,
points.
so they have to bubble each one.
Organization is 4 points. Support 4, and language 4.
But again,
They asked for that because they've had so many problems
With the writing
writing.
and the scans and nothing comes up.
so yeah, then that'll work. Because they're organized by folder, That's why the class period's on here and the teacher whose papers are being scored. But I would suggest underneath the title, you put the scorer's name on it, so we know who to attribute it to if there's questions.
Under middle school English essay scoring sheet.
So that it's there, so you know. And then we have something to go back to if we need to.
Oh my. So overwhelming. Well, I was just trying to figure out when we're gonna tell them about this.
Yeah, because we just had our PLC today, and
So
then
it's
next
kinda
week
like-
we're doing our essays
And the
Monday,
essays Monday and
Tuesday.
Tuesday, so it's kind of like
So
this
a bit of
information
advice
is
then?
like a day late and a dollar short.
What I did was I sat down and composed emails along the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my notes in an email and